Now we start with Ukraine. Residents of Kyiv have taken shelter at metro station during overnight Russian strikes in Ukraine. This comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that Russia launched more than 650 drones and over 50 missiles of various types in an overnight attack. According to Ukrainian authorities, the strikes have killed at least 2 people and injured 17 people, including children between 2 to 16 years of age. Let's listen into what some Kyiv residents have said about spending the night in the metro station.
І це не закінчиться, аж поки вся світова спільнота не буде протидіяти Росії. А поки Росія не скаже, що вона агресія. Несе вона агресія.
Звісно, холодно, звісно. Хочеться бути вдома. Я сьогодні вихідна, а взагалі мені на роботу дуже часто зранку. Я хочу спати вдома, а не в метро, і коли мені холодно.
Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry has stated that Russian armed forces have launched a massive strike on Ukrainian industrial complex facilities overnight in response to Ukraine's attacks on civilian targets in Russia. Ukraine's largest private energy producer has stated that the overnight attack was a bad blow to winter power supply readiness of the country. The Russian Defense Ministry has also stated that their forces have taken control of Krasnohirsky in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region and Sadov in Kharkiv region. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us again. Good to see you. Mark, looking at this, what are we to make of this intensifying attacks from both sides with no talks, no ongoing talks for the ceasefire and no statements coming in from either Europe or Trump?
Asuma, good to be with you. In many ways, honestly, I find it extremely sad because you and I constantly, we have these discussions where we're reporting on the inch-by-inch advancement by the Russians. We are then report on, we're seeing reports, some of them saying there's more deaths. We're looking at the drone strikes on either side, from Ukraine, from Russia, and as you pointed out, the attacks on energy infrastructure as it's coming up to winter time, which can be very, very, very extreme. We've also already seen the amount of deaths on the Russian side of 1 million and many hundreds of thousands on the Ukrainian side with all the devastation. There has been a Russian comment that says, you know, to the Trump administration, which is to stop backing European sanctions and to actually let's get down to negotiation to end this war. And we also have to be very mindful again of the fact that in February 2022, Russia then invaded a sovereign country. Now, the complexities of the history of that, when we're talking about Kyiv, we remember that was at one time the Russian capital. We also have to bear in mind all the intricacies of relationships between said people within their country. Remember Ukraine then when the wall came down in 1989. And then we have to remember in 1974 when the then Clinton administration says you get rid of your nuclear weapons, we will then back you. Why am I saying all this? It's the history is deeply complex, and it's a history that we also must continually to remind ourselves. And the other thing as well, there's nothing against you, Asuma, of course, but if we're constantly coming on, not where no one is willing, we need to see the parties coming to the table to end this, and that is what we want. Cynically, within certain aspects of this, we have to ask how serious people are in actually ending this. Asuma.
Yes, and Mark, yesterday we also saw it's very sad that we have to keep discussing this topic and seeing this not end at all. And yesterday we saw President Putin announced their new advancement in a drone system, which was a submarine, nuclear submarine drone system. What do you make of this? Do you think it's just information warfare over here, and he's trying to buff over here?
In my own humble opinion, of course, we have to remember that the Russians are extremely good at propaganda, but they also have technology, and they have the technology and the weapons to then threaten Europe. That's also what we have to then bear in mind. We also have to remember that this is having a huge effect on their economy as well. And then with other economies in Europe not doing very well, you could cynically say, well, one of the things is we'll just not end this because of an escalation of a war. May solve a few things for people, but it's in the end, it's that awful thing where we see the fact that people are killed, and we see the devastation then of the outworkings of that across Europe. But propaganda, that is the big thing. It's the big thing on both sides. Remember, not long ago, at one point, there was the discussion about putting the Tomahawk stuff into that military hardware into the theatre of war in regard to Ukraine, and for the Ukrainians to then be able to threaten Russia with that. It's the escalation, but I come back to it, as you have just said, we need people around the table, not just talking about exchanging prisoners like they did in August in Turkey, but to actually say, how do we end this? We have to discuss the invasion, the 20% of Ukrainian land taken, go through history, but also to say this has to end because people are dying. And as you pointed out, people are then going off to the metro to then survive yet another drone attacks, and where those drones are going, when people say, no, we're not targeting civilian but we are then targeting the energy infrastructure.
Yes,
Asuma.
indeed. We will be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for always joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we move on and we stay in the region. Following his party's strong performance in the October 29th election, Rob Jetten now stands on the verge of making history as the youngest and first openly LGBTQ+ Prime Minister of the Netherlands. The Netherlands, known for its progressive values and strong protections for LGBTQ rights, was the first country to legalize same-sex marriage 25 years ago. A landmark has achieved under a D66-led government back then. Shifting our focus back to the Dutch polls, Jetten, in his campaign, expanded his message beyond D66's traditional social liberal focus on climate change and education. He tackled divisive national issues such as immigration and the housing crisis, winning over voters who had previously leaned towards right-wing parties. Meanwhile, some locals have reacted to these results. Let's listen in.
The far right, the populists are getting a little bit back to the middle, so I think that's good. With the outcome, it's quite difficult to form a coalition, which we need, of course, as a stable country to run the country in a stable way.
Mixed feelings, because it's more complicated, because it's more even now between the D66 and the PVV. But I'm happy the PVV didn't get as much votes as they did by the last elections.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Sander van Hoorn. He's a former EU correspondent, joins us live from Amsterdam. Thank you very much, Sander, for joining us again. Good to see you. As yesterday we were talking about Geert Wilders, far-right PVV. However, they have lost by only 2,300 votes. Instead, the centrist D66 party has won. Were you surprised? Do you think the voters are shifting? What do you think they're shifting towards now?
Well, I'm going to bring you up to speed with the latest news, because the latest news is that the PVV party of Geert Wilders is actually bigger than Rob Jetten's D66. And it's a margin of, I'm going to read it out in full, 1,984 votes. So that is indeed too close to call. And that's why both party leaders have not yet proclaimed their victory, because some votes still have to be counted. And it will take until the last vote is counted to proclaim a winner, because the margin between both parties is extremely slim. Only less than 2,000 votes. Imagine that.
Yes. Wow, thank you for updating that, Sander. Thank you very much. Sander, can you tell us who is this leader, very charming Rob Jetton? What more can you tell us about this individual?
Well, he's young. He's not even 40. That would make him the youngest prime minister, if elected, of the Netherlands. He basically opposed Geert Wilders in every fathomable way. And that gained him a lot of votes from, I think, other left-leaning parties that wanted to break with the nationalist trend in Holland. So he has had a slogan, bit like Barack Obama, yes, we can indeed, was his slogan. So against the negativity that he said was coming out of Geert Wilders' party and other right-wing parties. And that's why a lot of analysts think right now that he took actually some seats of left-leaning voters that more voted against Wilders than they voted for Rob Jetten. But it is this positivity, also an active campaign on social media like TikTok, that made him this big, because they gained a lot of seats. Whether they will be the biggest or not, then they will be second by only a slim margin. So that's quite something that he showed.
And what is his campaign transformation, including, you've mentioned he used a lot of TikTok or social media. What does this tell us about changing expectations of Dutch voters?
Well, I think Dutch voters are split. Like Geert Wilders wrote an anti-immigration ticket, and then still, if you talk to people, one of the bigger issues in the Netherlands, not so much only the fact that many foreigners come in, according to them, but also the pressure that puts on housing in the Netherlands. Housing is a big theme for everybody. The left-leaning parties, including Rob Jetten's D66, have said that it's only a small fraction of the people that get houses that are actually immigrants. So let's face the real problems we have to build. Rob Jetten famously promised 10 new cities in a lake in the middle of the Netherlands. So that's a different approach, and that is, I think, what has polarized Dutch society right now. The people that want to continue on like the way we had before, a multi-party coalition government in the middle, and the people that still want different solutions, a full stop on immigration, stuff like that, the things Geert Wilders proclaimed.
And Sanders, building on that, yesterday we were talking that Geert Wilders is kind of segregated out of coalition while he looks for. Do you think he can still find a coalition? And given the Netherlands' tradition of coalition governments, how might Jetten's optimistic, yes, we can, and indeed, message translate into the tough compromises that governing would require?
Well, the biggest party is kind of relative in the Netherlands, because we have a 150-seat parliament, and the biggest party, whether that's the PVV or D66, will make something like 26, 27 seats. So they will need to govern probably with 3 other parties. Now, the rule is that the biggest party, whether it's by 1 vote or more, gets to get the first turn at forming a coalition government. So if Geert Wilders' party turns out to be the biggest one, he is the first one to try to form a coalition government. Then we will have to see, for example, the conservative liberal VVD party, if they stick to their word that they are not going to govern with Geert Wilders' PVV. But that is something that is not fixed. That is something we will have to see. And only if the biggest party does not succeed, then the runner-up gets to try to form a coalition government. But it still may well be that D66 turns out bigger. It's only a 2,000 vote margin right now. We're still waiting for part of the results from the biggest city in the Netherlands, Amsterdam, but also the former colonies, Bonaire, St. Eustatius, and Saba between Venezuela and America. We still have some official Dutch communities there. Those votes have not been counted yet. And even the mail-in votes from the people abroad, estimate of like some 90,000 people that voted by mail, they have yet to be counted. And expect those results maybe early next week, and that's why the official body proclaiming the results may only end up proclaiming the definite result next Friday. So Friday, a week from now. So it can really be exciting up until that point in the Netherlands.
Yes, we will be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Sander Verhoeven, for joining us and sharing that